Oh, but yeah, well, like I was saying, because I think there's a misconception that the younger kids aren't as affected because of the situation, right? But if we really think about it, how could we not be affected?
Oh, for sure.
Like, because the trauma that our parents dealt with in the camp,
Mm-hmm.
when we came to America, it's not like it stopped, right? And even
Yeah.
the siblings, because as they're gonna find out later on, unfortunately, your parents didn't get to make it, and that's another aspect of it that I'd like for you to share and talk about and what that was like,
Okay.
and your adoption, and how you and Anna, how life was like for you guys living in that environment, right?
Okay.
And then a little bit about so we have the camp situation, your parents. You had talked a little bit about that,
Mm-hmm.
and then how has that in itself affected you growing up emotionally, physically, mentally, and things of that nature? How till this day are you trying to either cope with it, go through it, live with it? What are some of the mistakes that in your mind you can think of that you allowed to occur because of this? Because I'll be honest with you. There's certain things that when I look back at it and I recognize the things that I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't really even because of the circumstances in itself, more so about the whole camp situation and the growing up with parents who went through it. That I'm like, oh, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I'm kind of curious to know as you got older, how did that affect you and things like that? But yeah, for you, go ahead.
No, so I'll start off by saying this, and this is why I said I think it might be a little bit different. I've pretty much suppressed everything that happened.
Right.
Like I don't really have any memories of what happened. Like
Right.
I came over when I was 3. You know,
Mhm.
one of the earliest memories that I have, that I at least I think is my earliest memory, is, and in my mind I've told myself we're in New York, right?
Mhm.
But I don't really know if it's New York. We're getting off of a bus, and I'm with a group of people,
Right.
right? And I'm very very young. I'm in a stroller, and I remember, you've been on a city bus before.
Mhm.
Those doors open, and the steps are really steep, right?
Right.
And I just remember holding somebody's hand and walking down these steep steps.
Right.
I'm like very very young at the time, like, so I barely can walk or whatever.
Right.
And then I remember getting into like a stroller, and then us kind of just like walking. And I remember sitting in the stroller and like looking up at these buildings, and they're just massive, right?
Right.
And that's like my first memory.
Right.
No, actually that's not true. So there's that memory, and I don't know which one comes first, right?
Mhm.
To be honest with you, the other memory that I have is I'm sitting on a plane, and I'm sitting next to my uncle Daniel, and I have this, like, I don't know what it is, but we're watching a movie, and then for whatever reason I feel like I'm really starting to get sick,
Right.
and I just remember throwing up, and my uncle Daniel being the one to take care of me as I threw up.
Okay.
And that's like my first memory. My assumption is like that might have been a plane ride to
Mhm.
America.
Right.
I don't know what leg of the trip it might have been on, and then I'm assuming that one's first, and then the next one is the skyscraper with the bus.
Okay.
But as far as like events that happened in the camp,
Oh yeah. No.
I have no memory.
You and me both. I guess maybe we should start the podcast. What's up, ladies and gentlemen?
Oh.
Welcome to another episode of A Meal in the Conversation. Today I got my brother, Amani Tembo.
Yep.
All right. Sometimes I'm like, I hope I don't like
Butcher my
yeah,
name.
butcher. No, the last tempo. Like I don't tempo. It depends on who you're talking to. But anyways, today we're having Hawaiian barbecue. We started eating already. But anyways, just wanted to bring the introduction. But like I was telling you earlier, a few things that we talk about. All right, so like you just stated, you and I, yes, I would agree with you because I don't really recollect anything that actually happened in the camp.
Yeah,
right?
like-
Because we were so young and so little.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and also I was talking to John last week in the podcast that I had, and I was talking about my whole father situation. I think that's one of the places that I would like to start, right?
Okay.
What does growing up, and I'm guessing your adoptive parents told you that your parents were, I don't know if they told you or if your siblings told you, because I guess only you and Anna were able to get adopted since you guys were the youngest ones, I'm assuming, because Christian and David were too old to get adopted, or I don't even know how that process was like. I'm not really sure.
So the woman who, I guess you could say, fostered Christian and David, had fostered children before from, like, you know, refugee kids, I guess you could say. I mean, that's what we're quote unquote classified as.
Right.
But she always dealt with older children. She was a little bit older herself, so it was kind of like a give and take relationship. Honestly, like she needed somebody that was going to be able to help her out around the house,
Right.
and then she could also then in return teach them how to grow up in America.
Okay.
Right. And so, being that Anna and I were so young, she just didn't really have the capability to take care of. I was like not a newborn, but like I wasn't talking.
Right.
There was a lot of health things coming over from a war-driven camp, you know, and she just wasn't prepared to take care of children that young. So we lived with her while my adoptive parents were getting like their house ready and stuff like that. Like there's certain protocols, like they had to put a pool around the fence and a fence around the pool.
I was like, a little bit backwards, but all right.
Stuff like that. And so we lived with her for like a couple weeks, I think. And then once my parents were, I guess you could say, quote unquote, certified and had everything up to code to have young children living in their house, then we moved in with them. But I wouldn't say that they didn't adopt David and Christian, because we've had conversations about that. They would have. They really did want to keep us all together. But Mary, the older woman who fostered them, was just not ready to take us, me and Anna. So that's kind of where the split happened. That's like the best way I could explain it.
Wait, so but did you guys still able to keep in communication, right?
Yeah. We saw them all the time, and I mean, had a good relationship with Mary Tubalda. That's who, the woman who took in Christian and David. And I remember days that we'd go over to her house. Her dog's name was Kiwi, like a little small white dog, and I was in love with the dog. And she would make us food. First time I played PlayStation 2 was with Christian at her house. So it was given the circumstances, it was a beautiful thing.
Right.
And that's just my opinion of it.
All right. Okay, so as you get older and you start to understand the whole dynamic of, I'm guessing you never really questioned if these were your actual parents or not. But when was that conversation like had with you, and how old were you, and how did you respond to it? Did you, just like the camp, suppress those emotions that arose when you were told that information about your father and mother?
Yeah, so, I mean, my parents are white, right? So it's a little hard to hide the fact that, like, you know, clearly we didn't come from them.
Right.
And I can't really recall, like, you know, like a specific conversation where they, like, sat us down and said, like, you know, you were adopted, this is what happened to you. So they actually adopted all of their children. So they have 6 children, right? Me and Anna are 2. The 2 oldest, or the 2 that were adopted before us, Gabe and Elodia, were Hispanic. So the way that they kind of explained it was kind of like, we're just a family that we get to choose our family, instead of this is a family in which you were born in, you know. Right. And so there was a lot of diversity in the family, just like from Hispanic culture, learning a little bit about that, our culture, trying to learn as much as we could, and then Barbara and Tony being like Italian. So we had Italian food and stuff like that. But it was an open conversation. Nothing was hidden, and it wasn't. But I can't really remember like a specific event where they like sat us down and had to tell us. It was just kind of like an open truth. Okay. And if you had questions, we'll answer questions. But that's kind of.
Did you ever have any questions?
No, not really. I guess maybe not until I got older. Okay. Like a lot older, you know, you start to, as you come into manhood, you start to question certain things. Right. You know, like certain, I mean, the same thing that you were going through, right? You start to question who your father was and how you emulate and how you see yourself in the world. But I didn't get that at like a young age. I probably didn't get that till I was like post high school. Like going into college, you start learning other things outside of like traditional curriculum. And then you start, you know, asking questions. So.
Okay, before we get before we get to that perspective, the kind of questions that you ended up coming up with, you just made an interesting point, and I'm kind of curious to know. You're trying to figure out our culture, right? Because you're in such a diverse environment, right? I never really got that, other than going to school, but it was just a bunch of black kids when we were in the apartments when we first came to America.
Yeah.
But they at least looked like me, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But how difficult was for you to connect with our culture? Because I feel like even I had a hard time connecting with my culture, and my mom
lived in it.
Yeah, I lived in it. My mom put us in every single thing that our culture was supposed to be in. But for you, how was that like trying to?
So there's this expression that goes, "You don't know what you don't know," right? So growing up, like I was learning so much, right? I was living in America, so we're learning about American culture. And sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, but I guess I never seeked out more information about our culture because it wasn't. I just had so much else going on that I never thought to think about it.
Right.
But when we would visit you guys, or I'd go visit my aunt Shingazi, questions would then come up, and it was like the questions that you have for like a moment, right? And then you go back to essentially your life, and then you're kind of just like in it,
right? And
those questions start to like bubble up, and then you don't really start to address them until you're older.
Okay, so we'll get to that perspective again in a little bit.
Yeah.
But did you ever feel like you didn't fit inside of the culture?
Well, yeah. So I mean,
no, because I genuinely
in our culture.
In our culture, right?
Yeah.
So actually, let's do both, right?
Okay.
In their culture and our culture.
Yeah.
And how difficult was how does one figure who they are? So another interesting perspective. You go from a death camp where people are killing you for what you look like and where you're from in your culture.
Yeah.
Now you get stuck in such a diverse culture and community, but then also you want to have that sense of identity in a community that you feel welcome and open to. And I don't think, I never was welcome as much as I think I should have in our own community, and I was raised around it, right? Because I was different, right? I didn't speak the language as well anymore as the other people, or I didn't I didn't do worship music and sing in the choir, so I didn't keep that connection. I just kind of did my own thing. But so for you, someone who, I'm curious to know how you navigated both those worlds and how did that affect you, I guess. Maybe once we talk about the questions you had when you got older, but how did that affect you?
Well, so, yeah, I would definitely say that like when you don't speak the language, first of all, right? Like one of the things that I always remember, and it still happens to this day, you'll have like grown men, like as you're growing up, like somebody will introduce you, like, and they'll say, "Oh, he knew your father," "Oh, he knew your mother," or "They knew your mother," and they immediately start to talk to you in your native language,
right?
And then you have to be like, "Oh, I don't even speak my own native language,"
right?
And it sits with you for a little bit, for sure. So in that sense, it was like, I don't want to say constant, because that's like I feel like that's too abrasive of a word, but I mean it was like a subtle reminder that it's like, oh,
you're different. You don't belong here.
Right? I wouldn't say don't belong. It's just like it's more of like it more or less gave you like a little bit of a drive. It's like I want to learn the language or something like that. I didn't see it as being pushed outside. It was more like curiosity, like, oh, now I have to go learn the language.
Right.
Something more positive, I guess.
So that's such an interesting. Because for me, I never felt that way. I never looked at it from that perspective where it pushed me to want to learn the language. Because my interactions with them would be more so like, how dare you not even be able to speak your own language? It was more so of a negative posture instead of, hey, like, why do you, in a more, I guess you would say, loving and open manner. But it's almost like, oh, this kid, how does he not even speak his own language, right? And then I just was like, so that pushed me even farther away from my own community growing up. I was like, why would I want to be a part of this community? This makes no sense to me, right?
But you could understand it a bit.
Oh no, I still can. Yeah, you're right. Yes, I can.
And so for me, I was, for a better lack of term or words, blissfully dumb. Like, you would overhear conversations that people were saying, and they would say stuff to you like, "Oh, why don't you know the language?" or something of the extent of what you're saying.
Right.
But me, it was just like, "Oh, I don't know what they're saying," And so I was like, "Oh, I should learn," and that's just kind of where my mindset was at,
Right. Okay, just this is probably be more of a side conversation. But Shangazi,
Mm-hmm.
what's your? I never really understood the connection because it almost seemed like she also played a pretty important role in raising Christian and David, and even you and Anna to an extent, I guess you would say, right? Maybe not as always there,
Yeah.
but I'm curious to know, like, what's the relationship there? How'd you? Is she a auntie? Is she a? I'm not really sure, because she was always there,
Yeah.
but I never understood why
So
or how.
so she's my father's youngest sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah. And so the way that it was explained to me that, like, you know, my my birth siblings, right?
Mhm.
David, Christian, Anna, and then myself. And we had a younger sister, but we lost her in the camp as well.
Mm.
But the way that it was explained to me is, you know, all four of us kind of had like somebody that we gravitated towards, right?
Right.
Christian had my mom.
Mm-hmm.
David had my grandma. Anna had my father.
Mm.
And me, I had Shangazi.
Oh,
Like,
really?
even when we were going through the camps and stuff, she was kind of the one that, like, you know, was changing my diapers or, you know, making sure that I ate.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, she's the one who taught me how to walk. So, like, and those are just, you know, stories that I've been told.
Right.
I clearly don't remember those things.
Mm-hmm.
But so, me personally, I've always been gravitated towards her, and I always wanted, like, a better relationship with her, or at least a good relationship that we do have, because I know that we have that connection.
Right.
So when she came over, I think the community and just about everybody wanted her to essentially take me, David, Anna on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to remember, she came over and she was like
Right.
maybe in her late 20s, 25, 26,
Mm-hmm.
and she's trying to navigate in America
Right.
and then also take on the burden of like 3 children. Like,
yeah,
that's tough.
Right.
But I do think that she felt like maybe she was getting, and this is an assumption, I really don't know,
Right.
but I think she was getting a lot of pressure from our community to have taken us in, right?
Right. Right.
And so, and then the rest of the community watched me and Anna be raised by a completely different culture,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some stigma there, right?
Right. For sure.
So, but no, we've had a very, very close relationship. I mean, that's the closest connection that I have to my father.
Okay.
So
yeah.
that's a beautiful thing for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I see it.
Okay. So before we go into more sort of questions as you got older, I'm curious to know the dynamic between. So you said you guys stayed close, right? You and Christian and David,
Mhm.
right? So wait, did that stick around the whole time as you guys grew up, or was there ever a time where you guys kind of it was you because as you get older, like for Christian and David, like they were a lot older.
Yeah.
A lot older, right? So they start doing their own thing,
For sure.
and so you don't really get to see them around anymore. I'm assuming this
Yeah.
is just an assumption.
Yeah, pretty accurate.
Okay, so then how does that what does your living situation at the house look like for you and Anna and the other three adopted siblings, or was it 2? You said there's 6 of you guys, so
Yeah.
let's say 4 other people.
Mm-hmm.
How does that living situation look like while Christian and David are kind of trying to navigate their own manlyhood as they get older?
Well, yeah. So like, they'd only lived with Mary, the woman I was telling you about, like until they turned 18, and then they were pretty much on their own, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But David always took it upon himself to, like, you know, come and see Anna and I, like, regularly. I remember, like, sometimes in grade school, you know, you have early release,
Mm-hmm.
and like if I called him, like, you know, a little bit in advance, I'd tell him, like, hey, I got early release this week, and he'd come pick me up.
Right.
We ride around in his car, we listen to his music. Like, I had a big brother experience with him.
Right.
Like, I didn't see anything. Again, it was my norm, so I didn't think much about it. You know,
Right.
I just like figured, oh, this is my life, and this is okay, this is normal.
Right.
And again, blissfully dumb. I just like enjoyed the moment. But he did always make it a point to be around. He came to football games. Same with Christian. Like, he went to Ironwood, the
Mhm.
high school that we went to, and played football. And some of the football coaches knew me based off of our last name. He's like, oh, you know Tembo. Like,
Right.
his name was known on campus. So like, I always had that, like, you know, that myth, that legend, like my older brother. You
Right.
know? So like, it was a beautiful thing.
Okay. That little piece is important for later. my later topic.
Okay.
But to go back to more so trying to. Okay, so after the bliss and the ignorance goes away, right? And you get older, you start knowing the information, right?
Yeah.
How does Amani start processing things as a young man, right? From that diversity that he's growing in that community, do you ever feel like you don't fit into I'm not talking about the culture anymore, but in that system, in a sense, like where you're with your adopted siblings, do you ever or your parents as well too, do you ever feel like you don't fit in? You felt pretty comfortable?
Yeah, I felt very comfortable. They raised me like their own.
Right.
I never once stopped like. I never once felt like it was like almost like it was an adoption. I was just their son. Like to this day, I still look up to my father, and I call him my father because I mean that's who he was, right?
For sure.
And when I have troubles with work, or when I have troubles in a relationship, or troubles in school, like that's who I go and talk to. Like I just spent probably an hour talking to my mom on the phone yesterday, and that's like a normal thing. It was just that was just my parents. That's what I knew.
Yeah. See that, man. That is beautiful because you hear other stories for. There's so many stories out there, right, where people are either fostering or trying to adopt for the wrong reasons, right?
For sure.
And so I'm really happy that that's the experience that you and I were able to get.
Yeah.
So we're about to segment into a little bit of a different topic, and again, this is all up to you if you want to share and express yourself, right? And unfortunately, I always wanted to get Chris on the podcast and talk to him and have a conversation with him, right? Unfortunately, I haven't been able to. I'm still hoping one day I will be able to, but until then,
give it time.
Give it time. I think it'll come around. No, I agree with you as well too. It's all about timing. But okay, so when the whole Chris situation occurs, right, where he ends up going to jail, for Amani, again, what is your thought process? How do you navigate that situation where your older brother is going to end up going to jail for a minute? It's not just like for a little bit, but it's going to be, I forgot how long it was, but for a while.
Yeah, it's a couple of years.
So yeah, how do you process that?
I mean, I remember when my dad told me another thing that he did, just like out of fatherly love, he always taught me how to grill, right? So I think I was like in 7th grade, and I was like trying out for basketball, like right. And we just got home from tryouts, and my dad asked me to grill something, and we're grilling for dinner, right? And he comes out, and he's like, "I got to tell you something," excuse me. He's like, "I got to tell you something, and it might hurt you to hear." But then he tells me like the events in which took place and what's possibility of what's going to happen with Christian. And to be honest, like it's a little bit of a shell shock. It's like it's hard to wrap your head around.
Right.
So you're listening, you're understanding, but like it hasn't really set in. You know what I'm saying? So like. We grill, he tells me what happened, he tells me the story. He works in law enforcement, so he was able to not read the files or anything like that, but he was just like able to talk to one of the officers to see what was going on. So he was always telling us as much as he could. But I remember we get done grilling, and then we go inside and we're gonna eat, right? As a family, we eat, and then he then asks like the other kids to go upstairs, and he tells Anna.
Right.
And Anna, and we're sitting in my living room. It's me, my dad, my mom, and Anna. And they break it to her, and she breaks down. I think just like again the shell shock of it. Right. I don't know, like I mean she was a little bit older than I was. I think she's 2 years older. So if I was in 7th grade, she was like a freshman in high school.
Right.
But like I remember watching her cry, and I was like, "Oh, this is serious."
Right.
Like, like I was like, I don't know. Maybe that's a bad way to say it, but
No, I get what you're stating though, because no, I get you.
so fast forward, he goes through his trial and everything, and to be honest, like I was just in a point in my life where I don't want to say that I was so focused on myself, but like there was just so much to process while I was, going through that.
Right.
And I remember occasionally we'd get like phone calls from him like at night and stuff like that. And I will say that like one of my regrets is that I never did write him. I think Anna did write him a couple times, and I would like say hi or something like that. But I think given the chance, I would have sat down and like actually wrote him.
Why do you regret that?
Because I mean, being on the other side of it now that I am a man, like I think about the possibilities of being in a prison and what that does to your mental state.
Right.
And I think a letter is something very simple that goes a long way.
Right.
And it's not that I wasn't capable of doing it. I just didn't. At the time I didn't realize the impact in which it could have made.
Right.
So I guess looking back on it and knowing now what I know, I would have done it differently. Like I would have wrote him.
Right.
But yeah, I guess.
Okay, so it sounds like, and I'm curious to know if you've actually sat down and tried to process these emotions that you've been through, because like you stated, you suppressed the whole. And I think for us as the younger kids, psychologically, our brains were just like, this is a really shitty experience that you just went through, and for me to protect you at least a little bit, let's forget this stuff that happened, right? But then as you get older, you begin to make those, like, you begin to suppress them yourself, right? Because you're at least conscious of what's happening at the moment, but understand that they're difficult to deal with. One, what are some of those, if you can think of any, what do you think is the emotion that you try to suppress the most growing up? And even till this day, do you think you still suppress it? Or do you or is there anything that you think that you're realizing now as you got older that affected you when you were younger, but because you suppressed them when you were younger, you didn't really recognize them? I don't know if that question makes any sense. I can try to rephrase it, but
No. I think I get where you're going, and I'll tell you this in response. And one of the things that I didn't tell you earlier, I guess, that I probably should have is, growing up in an American school system, you definitely feel isolated.
Right.
So like I grew up in a school system where like 90% of the kids were definitely not black, right? It was either white or Hispanic. We grew up in Glendale,
right?
And there's a lot of Hispanics as well, but mostly white, right? And I've had like a good experience, right, in school. Like people liked me. I'm an approachable guy, nice to teachers. I was a halfway decent student. But you get on subjects like slavery, right? And you're sitting in a classroom and you're the only black kid in the classroom,
right? And
they're talking about these events that took place, and then everybody's like looking at you. That makes you feel isolated, right? And it prolongs into grade school to high school, right?
Right.
And I remember always thinking to myself, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing to say, but like I always knew that I was African, right? Like I knew where I came from. I have my same last name.
Right.
I even took pride in the fact that, maybe this isn't the best thing to say, but like my ancestors weren't slaves, right? Like I'm not African American, I'm African.
Right.
And that's something that I kind of always told myself. And maybe that kind of gave me the confidence to get through that stuff, because I told the kids the same thing, like, and honestly, it's a statement out of defense,
right?
Yeah.
I
don't think I understood that at the time, but I know that now. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't think I suppressed anything, like as far as like emotions go. But I will say, growing up, being black in America is just like a struggle within itself, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like pushed me to be, you always hear this phrase, you got to be like 5 times better than your white counterpart, right? And I've always like had this drive. I gotta do good in school. I gotta do good in sports. Whatever it may be, and it kind of like drives you and motivates you.
Okay, just since we're at that, do you still believe that is true? That you have to be 5 times better than your counterparts?
No, and the reason why, and this is honestly like a more recent revelation that I had.
Right.
There's this podcast, or not podcast, but there's this show, Barbershop, and it's
LeBron James.
Yeah. So the dude from Get Out, the actor. So there's a more recent episode, and he touches on it a little bit. And there's some guys that are on there. They talk about racial tensions about stuff, and he's from the UK.
Right.
And he said that like when he was growing up, he had similar situations. He felt like he needed to be 5 times better just to prove that he was good enough. But now he's at a point in his life where it's like you're not doing it to be 5 times better because you have to prove yourself to some other thing,
right? Like
to somehow be accepted in this community. But now you're doing it for yourself. I want to be 5 times better because I want to be 5 times better. Right. Does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
So, and it's kind of like lifted this burden off of me where it's like I'm not doing it for them now. I'm just doing it for me because that's what I want to be. You get what I'm saying?
No, I get. Okay, so just why do you think it's so? Because this is a more recent revelation for me as well too. Again, I'm not trying to state that this whole slavery and the effects that it caused the black people isn't real, right? That
for sure.
But to make what I have a really big issue with is to make the statement that somehow today us young black folks are still getting mistreated the same way as the people during Martin Luther King's era. Right. Where they were actually getting killed and getting hosed down, actually having to go out and march for their rights.
Yeah, they had it a lot worse than us. I'll tell you that.
And, no, fact, but to try to compare those two and say that it's still the exact same way, I just find that very difficult to believe, right? But my question to you now is, why do you think that's why do we hold that so near and dear to us as the black community instead of from that perspective of, instead of me trying to be 5 times better, that I have to be 5 times better than my counterpart so I can be able to get this same job that I went to the same career for, things of that nature. Why do you think we hold it so dear, that perspective so near and dear to us? I have an assumption, but I'm curious to know your perspective on that.
Well, I think you see it everywhere. You hear it from your stories, and you're gravitated towards individuals that look like yourself. So you begin to, hold that as a truth. So I mean, if you're watching Martin Luther King or like the actor that I was telling you about, and he's saying he feels he needs to be that 5 times better for whatever reason, right. You recognize this guy looks like me. He's from the same place that like our ancestors are from the same place. So I must feel that I need to do the same thing, right? Like you're looking at somebody that you emulate, that you look up to, and these are the same struggles that they went through. You then relate that to your own life, and then think to yourself, this is what I need to do in order to get where he's at, or wherever they are. It might be a girl as well.
Okay, so see, if you're looking at it from that perspective, I salute you for it, because that I think is a better response than, at least I'm gonna just speak from my own personal experience.
Go ahead.
When thinking about, I have to be 5 times better than the white folk because this, and the other. Yeah. I think for me, it was more comfortable for me to be okay with my failure, because then I'm like, it's not because I'm actually failing. It's because for some reason the world is against me because I'm black and my skin color and things of that nature. And so it kind of gives me, it really gives us a way out in a sense, if we really think about it. Because at least for me, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me, it made my failures not my own anymore. Right, and I think we hold it so near and dear because we want to. No one likes to fail, right?
For sure.
But if you fail, you want to find a way to not make it your own. But if that no longer is on the table, that whole 5 times better, the whole because of your skin color you can't get this job. Now your success and your failures are your own, and you have to actually deal with them. And so I think for me, again, not for all black folks, but for the younger kids, at least from my perspective,
For sure.
it's more of an excuse, in my opinion, than more so a reality. But we want it to be so true because the stories, the experiences, because we can't take those experiences away. I think those are very important to keep. But more so, that makes us be okay with our failures being someone else's fault. But anyway, that's just my perspective. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but
I would say that that's kind of like the flip side of the coin, right?
right, yeah.
I had never really thought of it that way, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go into like inner cities or something like that, I'm sure a lot of their justification is like, okay, well I don't have to aspire to be great because like all these obstacles are out in front of me.
Yeah.
And that's the easy cop out, Like I'm not saying that's maybe like a bad way to say it, but like that might be that might be their justification as to why they think that way,
Okay, so then I guess it goes. So then now my question is, yes, but don't everybody have those? Again, I know if you ask some certain black folks, like we have even more to go through,
for sure.
But we can't just make that such a factual statement that somehow you and I, being black, have so much more obstacles to go through than, let's say, a white folk in wherever you want to call it. We don't know their environment. We don't know their situation. We don't know what their parents are like or the abuse that they have to deal with. So that statement is such a. Again, I understand why we as African Americans want to keep that going, but it's almost like at some point it has to. At that point, when does it stop, right? When do we begin to take responsibility for our own actions, right?
Yeah.
And again, I know some people are not going to be a big fan of that, but that's just my perspective. And again, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that everybody is like this, right? Or we got to take away the experiences and the things that happened before.
Yeah.
But for the younger people, in a sense, to be more realistic with the circumstances and situation. Like you, honestly, if you just the fact that you live in America, you're in the 1% of the whole world, right?
For sure.
And so that alone, like, okay, now what do you do with it personally?
Yeah.
Let's go back to you and your life, brother. All right, let's. I don't know what. I don't know, but the questions that you begin to ask as you got older, were they? It seems like that one of them is the one we just kind of hit on a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, do you think this thought process became more evident during the George Floyd and all that other things that were happening in 2020? Or did this start happening before?
No, it started happening before.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember, so when I graduated high school, or like my senior year of high school, my dad works in law enforcement, right? He works in the Department of Homeland Security. And he got an opportunity to move to California, and it was a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my second half of my senior year, my parents were living in California. I was living in my grandparents' house just to finish high school, and then they gave me a choice. It was like you can go to ASU, but I didn't really want to go to college like university. I don't know.
Right.
There was like a stigma to it.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of saw it was like frat guys, and I just didn't want to go there.
Right.
And they're like, you can either do that or you can move out here with us, but you have to get a job and you have to go to school. So I figured I moved out there, took a couple classes, started working at a Lexus dealership, and to be honest, I didn't have a lot of friends, and so you kind of just like you're stuck with yourself,
right?
And then you start asking questions that maybe you've been asking yourself for a long time and never really got a chance to address.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually took this course. It was a history course, and I think it was like American history from like 1700 to like today or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they touched on subjects again through like they talked about black codes, which was like something that they American people would like or the American law implemented right after slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So like if a black dude was walking on the same sidewalk as a white woman, he could be arrested.
Right.
Like, and I thought to myself, they never taught us this in high school. They never taught us this in grade school. And then like that's kind of where the conversation and the curiosity kind of just drove at me.
Right.
And again, like I'm working, I'm going to school. Like to be honest, I didn't have much of a social life.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went down YouTube rabbit holes.
Right.
Like, and YouTube is a great place to just kind of get lost. And you watch these debates with these individuals, or like these, you know, like I watched one that was like super big on me. It was like 5 leaders of black organizations in the 60s, and they're just talking about, you know, the state of society at the time and how to fix it and what sort of pressures you can put where to get, you know, a sort of response that's like from the American people that best suits you. You know, like if you stop paying insurance, like the insurance companies are going to take a hit, and they'll like, okay, they'll start bartering with you. Like, what are we going to do in order to like make this situation correct? You had the Montgomery bus boycott, where like, I don't know if people understand, like they boycotted that bus for months on end. And that entire like industry, the bus line, which was fed by the state, like put pressures economically, right, on the city to then meet the demands that they had, because you need to restart that, right? Yeah. So you start learning all these things while you're going down these rabbit holes, and that's kind of where like I started having these conversations with myself, and I'd ask my parents about it, and like that's really where it started for me. And so when everything that was going on with George Floyd, I had watched so many YouTube clips about history that had taken place and like the marches that went after it, like it felt repetitive.
Right.
Like I've seen this before. I've watched these YouTube clips where, you know, the thing with the boy who got Emmett Till, right? And his mom did something that was like crazy important for the community. And Dave Chappelle kind of talks about it on one of his specials. And he talks about how like his mom wanted him, like the world, to see what they had done to her child. It was brutally murdered. Right. And like, but that sparked a conversation in the nation, and it addressed certain things. So like, seeing the video with Floyd and the like, as hard as it was to stomach, but like, we've been here before. We've done this before. It's repetitive. Right.
Okay. You and I will touch a little bit more on that perspective off camera, for the simple fact that I'm pretty sure my take is a lot more controversial than most, but I'm curious to know your perspective on. So before later on, when I first saw that video, then because for me the whole, how do we want to call it, awakening, but more to try to figure out that whole, because I'm a lot like you, right? Because I made that I'm African, like it doesn't really, that for some reason it never felt like that. The whole black situation really fit my category until that moment, and I began to think, oh shoot, like I thought America had been past all of that before, right? So in that but then again, as you begin to do your own research and understanding of this, again, no one is saying what occurred was. I'm probably gonna edit this part out, but just so you and I can have this conversation, right? The fact that he shouldn't have died, right? That situation should have never happened.
No, not at all.
But for some reason, when that happened, I put myself in his situation. But in all reality, again, just follow me here.
I got you.
You would, again, I don't want to speak for you, but you and I would never really be in George Floyd's situation, for the simple fact of, again, when evidence comes out, one, he was crazy doped up on drugs, right? Before that whole scenario happened, right? And
you think he was intoxicated at the time?
No, yes, yes, because when the cops show up, they ask him, "Hey, do you have any drugs or things of that nature?" And he had some drugs in his pocket, and he took it all so that the cops didn't find it on him, right? So imagine he's taking a bunch of pills, right, and he eats it. That already affects your system, right? So when they go put him in the car, the drugs start kicking in, and he starts fighting against them, right? You and I would never be in that situation. Well, I don't know, I don't speak for you, but I'm pretty confident in who you are, and I know you as a man. You're not gonna take a handful of drugs and just put it in your mouth so you don't get into trouble, right?
For sure.
And then so what happens is that he ends up freaking out and then fighting against the police officers, right? So now he's doped up, so he's super strong, like it's hard to contain. Again, it doesn't excuse the fact that he died or anything like that.
I hear.
But to what I wasn't a big fan of later on was how we made him to be some kind of hero or some type of face of the black community. Because now how is that?
You say we though.
What do you mean?
You said we made him the face.
Yeah,
of the black community.
Yeah, because the whole world made him the face of the black. Like the person.
I would argue the media kind of made him the hero of
Well, yeah.
in the community, but that doesn't mean that like I saw George Floyd and I was like, that's my.
Oh no,
hero.
okay. So I agree. Okay,
Like,
so
you
okay,
get what
so
I'm
I,
saying?
yeah, no, I agree. The media make him out to be some kind of hero and saving the black because what he basically, and for his death he ends up rising these conversations, things of that nature. But it's again, there's the ignorance is always the biggest thing in any situation, right? But to take that and look at it from like we've already been here, you can't really compare that situation with what Emmett Till went through. Those are two completely different scenarios in the same progress in that sense, right?
For sure.
But it was a felon after felon and things of that nature. To compare him to Emmett Till and try to put him on the same pedestals of those people, to me, I think when media did that, I was like, that is so unfair to do, right? But anyway, that's my perspective on the George Floyd.
I would counter and ask you, right?
Yeah.
Like, what circumstances, what environment was he in that made him make the choices that led to it, right?
Right.
Say he was applying for a job at like UPS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his name stuck out, and he didn't get the job opportunity because like the hiring manager saw, oh, this is a black dude, I don't want to work with a black dude, right?
Right.
That's the racism that's in America. That's a very strong possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a man, as an individual, you have to look at yourself, right? Maybe he's got a wife and a kids, and he's got to feed his family.
Right.
What other choices do you have if you can't get a job at UPS, or if you can't get you can't get an actual job, right? Now you're left with a couple choices. It's like, okay, now I need to make money somehow, some way, and it drives you to do like imagine if you're in a community, right?
Right.
And the only dudes that you know that are making money are the dope dealers.
Oh, for sure.
Like, wouldn't you be like the guy who tried to get a job at UPS, it didn't work because the hiring manager saw that he was black and didn't hire him, and now he's not making any money. But them dope dealers got, cars running around on big rims and chains and got a lot of money,
mm-hmm.
right? What am I gonna do?
Okay, so let me.
I gotta feed my kids.
Okay, so let me count. So now I'll give you a counter, right?
Okay.
Well, one, we can't. So you're telling me from one failed job attempt, you're just gonna go straight into the. No, but let's just be realistic. So because of what you're stating, right? So
yeah.
you one failed attempt, so now you're gonna go back to the streets and sell dope, right? Okay, but now you going back to the streets and selling dope, you have to understand there's consequences that come along with them, right? And so
sure.
Those consequences, you made the decision to be in that environment, regardless of your circumstance, right? Again, I'm not gonna say, oh, you did the wrong thing by going there and trying to provide for your family, but you have to understand what you just did as well too has consequences of themselves, right?
For sure.
And so that's where I would counter that perspective. If you think that that's the best thing that you could do for your family in that moment to provide for them, I've never been in your shoes, so I can't say you should or you shouldn't. But also remember, there is consequences that are going to happen to you once you make that decision. It's not just like, oh, well, I'm going to live happily ever. And then you can't get mad at those consequences because you made the decision to do so, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my counter to you from that perspective.
So now we're talking about the psyche of a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's this thing, right, that they teach in psychology, and it's when you have two individuals, right? Let's go back to basic instincts of a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say you're an individual, right?
Right.
You're a man. You have a loaf of bread, right? I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta eat.
Right.
I ask you, hey, can I have some of your bread? You tell me no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I go about my day. I try to figure something out. I can't figure it out. I come to you again the next day. I'm a little bit more hungry. Right. I ask you again, hey man, I really just need can I just get one slice of bread? You got a whole loaf, right? And again, you tell me no,
mm-hmm.
right? Okay, so I go back. I try to work it out. I try to figure it out. Try and work on it. Whole time I got a family I got to feed too. Don't forget that part.
Right, fair.
But this man still got a loaf of bread, and I know where the bread is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every day I'm more hungry. My wife is telling me she's hungry. My kid is telling me they're hungry. Like they have basic instinct needs, right?
Right.
Food, hunger, shelter, and water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I come back to you again on the 4th or 5th day. Hey man, you haven't ate all the bread. Can I just get a slice? I just need to feed my family.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I'm begging you. Like, hey, let me get some bread. and you're still not giving me any bread, right?
Right.
The 6th and 7th day, I'm not coming back to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to probably do something to harm you and take the bread.
Okay.
Right? And so sometimes I think we misunderstand that, like, we put people in situations that, like, they're trying. Right? I mean, and maybe they do something that exceeds for a little bit and they fall back again and they're trying.
Right.
And you keep asking the guy, like, he's trying to go the proper way.
Oh,
It's not saying that he's not. But there comes a point where it's a breaking, right? If you go 6-7 months without a job, like, you didn't go to the dope boy to ask for drugs, like, you know what I'm saying? But, like, you see that he's got bread, I'm gonna ask him. And now I got bread to feed my family. And now it's a different type of thing, right? Now I'm able to provide, right? I still run the risk of, like, getting in trouble, but, like, right now it feels good. Like, I'm on a little bit of a dopamine kick. Like, I got like the chemical compound that's in your brain that makes you happy. I'm making money. My kids are happy. Like, you're gonna continue that for, like, the risk starts to get a little bit lower mentally in your head, but that's not to say that it's not actually the same.
Right.
Does that make sense? That's kind of like a long tangent.
So again, I want you to say, like, yes, I agree with that perspective. Yeah, as a man and instinct and things of that nature, at some point you hit that breaking point, right?
Yeah.
And you hope you don't have to get to that point where you have to take the bread, right, instead of asking for it. Okay, but then it comes back down to, right? Yes, you made that decision that you made, right? Now, one, you'll have to deal with that mentally, right, with the decision that you made to go instead of ask to take it, and however form that looks like, whatever you want to put in that scenario. But mentally, with guilt, the guilt that will stick with you depending on what you did or things of that nature, right? You know what I'm saying?
Some guilt,
yeah, there's gonna be a bunch of guilt, and then going to the dope boy again, same thing. This, for a little bit, it might look like it's sunshine and unicorn rainbows, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, reality will set in, right? Just like you're hungry for a long time. Again, with scripture, just for scripture basic, like, there's times to be sad, happy, angry, mad, kill, save, things of that nature, right? There's a time for everything, right?
For sure.
So there'll be time that it's gonna, like, the happiness is not gonna last forever. For anyone to think that somehow we can live in a utopia where it's just happiness, all that's foolery to me, right? And so for that person, at some point, right, reality was set in. And his decision making up to that point will catch up to him, right? Yeah. And again, I don't care how we get to that point, right? But at some point we get to it. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the only thing that I'm saying. I don't disagree with anything, but the perspective of that there's no consequences to your action is where I'll be like, you don't just, yes, I understand that you had to, or at least you felt like you had to. But understand.
Yeah, there's consequences for the action.
Yes, there is, and that is really, I guess, all I would say. I'm trying to make it that point.
to come back full circle, I will say this, right? I think the reason why it made such public news was how grotesque the event was.
Oh, for sure,
And so, like, don't get me wrong, and to be honest, I didn't really know much about the case. I tried to stay away from it just because, again, my perspective was, I've seen this before 100 times. I've seen this 100 times, man. Like, this isn't new.
Right.
Like, cops killing black dudes on national TV happens all the time. And I can almost guarantee you in like 2 or 3 years, we'll have another event that'll spark just as much controversy.
For sure.
And it's going to be a very, very similar circumstance. But I think one thing that one thing that we have to take into consideration is how grotesque it was. Like, the man knelt on his neck.
Oh,
for
for sure.
8 minutes. We should attack this, or we should try to understand the psyche of that officer and why he felt he had the power to continue to kneel on this man's neck for 8 minutes, and that there wouldn't be consequences for him. Right? No, talking about consequences, like, there's got to be so I will say the difference, and the thing that kind of really makes me sick to my stomach, is there are companies and individuals that profit off the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is, like, okay, yeah, there's some media attention. I got you. But, like, people were making, like, stickers of his face and putting it on their cars. and there was a transaction that took place. There's somebody who made a sticker of his face and sold it to another individual so that they could put it on their car. You're literally profiting off of this man's death.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like there's a company or like that was printing the pictures of his face saying, oh, remember, and they're doing it underneath this false pretense of like, you know, we're spreading the word or whatever it may be, but like
profiting from it.
they're profiting.
That's tough.
And there's a Fry's that I go to, right off of I'm not gonna say where, but
yeah.
there's a Fry's that I go to, and like I have to turn out of it, you know, and like the way that traffic is set up is you have to go like across this lane in order to get it, and like I just happened to be turning and there was like a sticker there, and this was like a couple months ago. So I mean, this guy's sticker, I mean, this dude's face, George Floyd, is on the back of their car. It's still there. And I thought to myself, because like I'm a business student, right? That was my major, and I thought to myself, like, that individual in the car thinks that they're doing like, you know, this great justice. Like, I'm a social warrior. I'm like, you know, I'm making like a statement and I'm standing for a cause. Which, don't get me wrong, good for you.
Right.
But at the same time, like that company that made those stickers that profited off of it, like that's a sick and twisted thing in my opinion.
No, I agree with you.
And so like I would say the difference in today and like maybe Emmett Till, like, or like even past times, is like that's the distinct difference.
Mm-hmm.
Is that now companies and social media platforms and other people are like, they're literally profiting off of this man's death.
Right.
And like at some point you gotta let him rest in peace.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that kind of sits with me a little weird.
Okay, I don't want to continue this thing, but no. Okay, I'm gonna just agree with you because I actually do agree with that because I think it comes back down with even the Black Lives Matter, right? Like if we're focusing on the black people's lives, I'm all for it.
For sure.
But when you begin to, when it's for the sole purpose of your profit, that's when I begin to question the integrity behind what you're actually truly trying to do. Yeah. And so I guess there's always these extremes, man, that we have to look at. Like if we're looking at the center core of Black Lives Matter, that is what I actually agree with. Like the actuality of what that looks like and what that means and what that stands for. Yes, the core of it is what I stand for. It's unfortunate because people are always swaying. Like people always take everything to an extreme. We can't. For some reason, America is like that with everything that they do. It's the I guess it's everywhere. I wouldn't want to say America, but I think in every society. But things like people are just so naive to the extreme that bothers me. Right when you're okay with the extremeness that they take to it to profit from other people's whatever situation that they're going through, and then what makes it even worse is it's also black folks that are doing this, right? Yeah. Using the struggle, using slavery and things of that nature to be able to profit until today. My question for you, again, I'm sorry, I really do want to go back to your life, but my question for you is, do you ever think at some point white people will be like, all right, we're sick and tired of being guilty for something that happened so long ago, right? Like we've done our best to be able to, again, to think that somehow everybody's gonna be perfect and no racism is gonna ever exist. That's really foolish to me, right? Yeah. Because even black folks are racist. Like I know black people that are racist to white people just as much as white people are racist to black people, right? So, for sure. But we want to focus. One, there's always got to be a right side. But do you ever think at some point the white guilt is gonna be like, all right, dude, I'm over this. Like, I think I've done everything I can.
I think you're seeing that now.
Okay, so explain more from your perspective.
I mean, you could look at the state of everything that's going on, and I mean, even with the signs and everything that happened in 2020, there was a counter argument to that conversation.
Right.
And I think you're waiting for this, like, not waiting, but like this epiphany that like white folks are gonna have, or you know, that where they're like we're done.
Right.
But that stigma and that short fuse has always been there.
Mm-hmm.
So since we're just on the whole conversation, there's this law, right, that went into place, and I'm sure you've heard like what it was stigmatized as 40 acres and a mule, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh yeah.
so for those that don't understand the story, right, you had a Union general that reported directly to Lincoln, right, Abraham Lincoln, that went down to Georgia and talked to, like the Civil War had just ended, right, and the Union had essentially like taken over a bunch of land in the South, and it was called Field Act 15, I believe. And so what it did is it designated a bunch of land in Georgia, and it was to go to black people,
right,
black freed slaves, right? And the premise was, if you give them the land to till for themselves, and they're self-sustainable, they'll take care of themselves, right? They're grown men, individuals. They were working fields for a long time. They understand how it works. You give them 40 acres and a mule. The mule was to till the land, right? So they came to this conclusion, right? And you had support from the president all the way down, right? And this general went down to Georgia. Actually, don't quote me on where he went, but it might have been Virginia. It was somewhere in the South where they were designating the land. And he spoke to leaders in the community, in the black community. And he essentially told them, all right, you guys, we won the war, you're freed. What is it that will make you self-sustainable so that, America doesn't have to take care of you? And that's like the best way to simplify it. Right? And these individuals, these grown men, like don't minimize that. These were grown men that fed families. Told them, we don't want a handout. We just want a place that's ours that we can grow. Right? And so that's where that Field Act came into place. And they came to a conclusion, okay, we'll give every family in this general's vicinity 40 acres and a mule. And they were in the process of executing the thing, right? And then Lincoln gets assassinated. And so you no longer have the support from your top guy. And the new guy that comes in, the vice president, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to be misquoted, but he says, we're kind of giving him a handout, don't want to do that. And so he said, it's also Confederate territory, and when they come back from war, they're going to need the land. So you went from giving something to them, and honestly, it was land, the value of that land now is unfathomable, right? But it was an opportunity for African Americans to be self-sufficient, and they had it for like a couple years. It wasn't even fully like populated by the time that they after Lincoln died, and he just like the president at the time was like, yeah, I'm not going to honor that. So going back to the very, very, very beginning of like this quote unquote African American freedom, they were given an opportunity to build something for themselves. And you said, right, you're wondering whether or not white people have this epiphany where like, we're done dealing with it. I mean, this was like 2 to 3 years after the war, and they're like, we're done dealing with it. You get what I'm saying? So that stigma, that idea has always been there. Has always that like nonconformity or the unwillingness to like in a simple form give the black man his due or his independence, I guess you could say. That's always kind of been there. That's not something that's new.
Okay, so again, I don't fully know that whole law that was going to get passed and ended up, but from what I understand is what happened with the biggest issue was the fact that the United States said, oh, we actually do need that a black folk, what's that phrase that president said? How do we expect a black man to be able to pick himself up from a
bootstraps? Pick himself up from your bootstraps.
Whatever. Like they're like, oh, why do we shouldn't expect that because we for so long, yada yada. I forgot what president it was. Dan, I don't want to misquote it either. But and then they decide, oh no, let's give money to them, And that's when things started going downhill. Because with the land situation, they become self-sufficient. Yes, so now they don't need you. Like,
yeah.
But what's happened for so long though is the United States have whenever something like the Black Lives Matter situation happens, let's just throw a bunch of money at them and then we'll get rid of them for a little bit. And then the next 3 years from now, something's gonna happen. Let's just throw money at them, right? So clearly that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because that's not. But it works for specific groups of people, right? What's his name? Damn it, I don't know his name. He's a very well-known black leader, right?
Okay.
But it's more so for profitable gain, right? So in a sense, it's almost like they try to seek out all the wrongs and stuff that America does and try to get money from them, right? And instead of putting, and again, I'm trying to think who's this leader, right? But instead of actually taking this money and putting it back into the community, it's kept for themselves, right? And so now the black community and things of that nature, nothing grows. You're not putting better teachers, better educators into the system to be able to teach them, right? To become self-sufficient, like you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And so like, and I'm agreeing with you. I really wish I would have known the law better. And I keep forgetting what's his name. I should know his freaking name. But there's just a lot of leaders who are using the lack of word, the blackness in order to get profit from, right? And that bothers me, especially in a black, like, you're supposed to be helping the black community, but instead you're really taking from them.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so for you and I, let's make it a reality. How do we as black men go about this situation? How does Imani deal with this himself today, right? Not in the sense of trying to get money from the government or whatever.
I got you.
Because I think one of the biggest thing as a black man, I think we need to understand, right, is that perspective you're talking about, to build something of your own, right? Because now you don't really need nobody.
That's the key.
Okay. So for my,
in my opinion, that's the key.
So what does that look like for you, in your own perspective, right? How do you as a black man don't try to use the fact that I have to, again, going back from the beginning, be 5 times better.
Yeah.
For anybody but yourself, and maybe we'll bring it back into your own life and perspective when it comes to that perspective, right? Okay. How are you? You're what, 24, 25 now? 25. You just turned 25. Yeah. How are you navigating this circumstance that kind of correlates to what we were just talking about?
Yeah. So, I think as a man, plain and simple, no pretense, no black, no white before it. As a man, you owe a responsibility to yourself and to who you represent to build something for yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to. Like, and I don't use that term lightly, but like, that's something that's your responsibility. We have to build something for ourselves. I don't want a handout. I'm not taking money from anybody, right? Like, I don't want to do that. But there's a lot of opportunities. The very first thing, and this is kind of just where I'm at, is we got to buy land. Right? Going back to the very thing that I was talking about, right? Yeah. Buy the land, right? Mm-hmm. And then make it your own. Do what you want to do, right? Right. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But
buy the land and do what you want.
Yeah.
Where you're going.
Yeah. So, and once it's yours, you can do what you want with it. Like, it's really it's simple in a sense, but it's hard to do, right? Like, you have to have money and in order to buy land and buy property for yourself, right? But if you understand how to do that, like the tools and resources that are available to everybody, just living in America, like the different types of loans that you can get, understanding financial literacy is huge, right? Like, a lot of the things that, are detrimental to like the African American community is that we don't really understand money that well. Mm-hmm. But that's not always been the case. Right. And I think that's also like a stigma that like we have to understand from our history in order to move forward, is that like there was times even in like Tulsa, Oklahoma, where like they had a whole city where like 80% of like the dollar was in that community. You had barbershops, you had guys that owned clubs. You had repair shops, and they had their own businesses, and it was thriving. We've done it before.
Okay, so so my question, why do you think it's so hard for us to replicate that?
Because we don't understand our own history.
Mm-hmm.
We don't, if you were to ask some young kid on the street right now about Tulsa, Oklahoma, they might tell you about the massacre.
Yeah.
And even if they did, I'd be surprised that they knew about that. But do they understand what that city was like before it?
Right.
Do they understand that there was millionaires, black men millionaires that came from that town? That was a thriving community on its own, and it was black owned.
Mm-hmm.
And that there was probably 2 or 3 other places. Chicago, before it became what it is today, was a black community, right? A black city that was strong. We were building automobiles. You had trades that you were earning money as a man with your own 2 hands. We have to get back to the point where we're doing it for ourselves. And then you can own the land, and then you can build it for yourselves. But the moment that you're dependent on somebody else, you're at the mercy of that individual or that organization, or that government, whatever it may be.
Would it be wrong for me to say that, from my perspective, the reason why I feel like it's so hard for us to replicate what Tulsa and Chicago, like you're stating, were looking to achieve, was the fact that I don't believe that we want to actually genuinely work together. I think that's because in order to create a city like that, right, or an area like that, everyone has to be in agreement that we're trying to do this together. Because again, that's why we see a sense of community, right? So which blows my mind. The African community always wants to talk about how close and tight knit they are, but once you get into the tight knit, you realize how much division there truly is in just one tribe. Right, and then when you begin to add more tribes into that conversation, and then not even that in the black community, where you're this, you're that, you're whatever, we can't find this sense of unity, right? Mm-hmm. Can we? How do we ever even begin to build anything close to that if we can't even figure out a way how to live amongst one another, right? Yeah. Forget the white people, right? Forget just forget our issues with them, right? Mm-hmm. How do we deal with our own?
That's a beautiful question. I wish I had an answer for it.
Okay.
It really is.
No, I agree. I wish I did too, because I think to be able to see that, to be able to understand financial literacy, it would be the fact that we, one, as a community, begin to teach each other that, right? Mm-hmm. Not just having a LeBron James or Jay-Z who's all the way at the top, and then you just kind of have you have those rappers and things of that nature, and then just the other black folks, right? No, we begin to teach, and I'm not even, I think slowly, a little bit, just let's just say with the barbershop situation, where they talk about financial literacy and things of that nature, a little bit, right? But then, so then I'll ask this, because you seem like you actually want to seek knowledge, right?
Yeah.
You want to understand.
Yeah.
How big of a role does that play into being able to even begin to want to, for a mind to be, land is probably where it's at, right?
Yeah. And there might be another thing that I just that's just kind of where
I
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because that is yours, right? Now you can build, you can do whatever it is you want in that space, right? Because it's yours, and that's I think that is really how most of the people get really wealthy, is with real estate and land.
It's one of the most lucrative things in the world is owning American real estate. It's the most profitable thing over time,
and no one can take that from you.
Exactly.
And I've only said, okay, but with let's go back to the knowledge situation, right? From so you said that I'm curious to know how your school system worked, right, and things like that, because I was blessed. I was able to go to school and get an engineering degree and things of that nature, right? I think
very proud of you, by the way.
I appreciate it, my brother. I think I could have done a lot better, because at the end of the day, what I really wanted to become was a biomedical engineer, right? Okay. What happened is the community got to me, right? In the sense of, which is my own black folks, right? Making statements such as dude, come on, be realistic with your goals. Go into business or something like that, which I'm like, well, business is not that, you make it seem like it's just such, let me just go, I'm not even gonna think about it, I'm gonna get a business. No, but it's they're no, and there's people that are close to me, right?
Yeah.
But even from before then, before I just try to make a decision of what major I want, right? But at the end of the day, I decided to just go with the easiest engineer as possible, right? right? Like you,
Okay.
the lower, and again, I'm still proud that I was able to do it, but I'm still upset that I allowed a community to convince me that I wasn't able to achieve it, right?
Okay.
But from the school system mature, I'm curious to know if there's anything like mine, because when we first came to the States, we happened to be in these like really small ghetto apartments, and there was a school near us. But that school, it was with other black folks, right? There was never a sense of you can do better.
Say that again. I'm a little lost in the dynamic.
Okay, over here is a school, right? So we came from the death camp to America, and so now we live in a ghetto apartment, right? So there's other it was really a refugee apartment in a sense. There's a lot of black folks there, right?
For sure.
And there was a school that would most of us go to. It was all mostly black folks. There's a few white people, things like that.
Okay.
But there was never a sense of you can actually achieve something, right? Like I don't care what your experience is or what you've been through or what you think you're capable of. No. Your circumstances, you've been dealt a deck, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Now you got to figure out how to be able to make it with that deck, and you can actually achieve it if you just work hard on it. There was never that sense. It was more so, oh well, that's good enough, right? Even though you're not able to read at a level that you should be reading at your age, do the mathematics at the age that it was more so, no. You're okay doing the bare minimum, right? And it's but I'm curious, back to your question, how was your school system? Because I think that's so important as you grow up, right? Because if you're not being taught that you can achieve more because of your circumstances, right? They're using your circumstances to allow you to do the bare minimum or be able to stay where you're at. How does one ever achieve, right? And so for you, what does that school system look like growing up?
So, like I said earlier, like I wasn't really the best student, to be honest.
Right.
Like I did well enough to get by. Like,
Okay.
And that's the best way I can say it. Like I was like an A-B student.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly B, but I might, like history, I might pull A, PE, I'm gonna get an A+, But that's just who I was. But like in grade school and even in high school, I was never really drawn to school. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was never, outside of history class, like I've always kind of been a big history buff.
Right.
I went through like a phase when I was in grade school. I was like really big into Greek mythology and stuff,
Right.
but like that's besides the point. I would say that like my thirst for knowledge didn't start until I went to college.
Mm.
And I think one of the stigmas that we might have to get past is that like you don't have to like be thirsty for knowledge when you're 5 years old,
Right.
and your base might not be the thing that propels you forward.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to do is keep in it like a growth mindset, right? There's two
Right.
different quote unquote types of mindset: growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Right.
Fixed mindset, you're stuck in where you are and you're okay with who you are. But a growth mindset, you're constantly seeking knowledge and you understand that you don't know everything, right? And there's always more to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't understand that concept until I was in college.
Okay.
And then I would also counter you now, like, why do you think that you can't go back to school and get a biomedical engineering degree now, if that's what you want?
Oh yeah, facts.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like we have this like condition, I guess I would say, is that like because we didn't do it when we were younger, or we didn't do it at the time in which we were supposed to, like people think, a lot of kids growing up today think that they have to go to a 4-year university straight out of high school, and you have to understand what you're going to be for the rest of your life at 18 years old.
Yeah.
That's a tough decision.
That is tough.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You were talking about Jay-Z, right? He didn't
Mm-hmm.
start his rapping career until he was 26.
Yeah.
He didn't make his first million until he was like 28, 29.
Right.
This idea that you have to have it figured out when you're 18, 19 years old is, in my opinion, ludicrous.
Right.
Like, you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get me wrong, I think we should fix institutional learning as far as like, and creating like an incentive for children to want to get better grades and have a thirst for knowledge. Don't get me wrong there. But we also have to address the fact that learning never stops.
Right.
Right? Like, you don't have to have it figured out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you wake up one day and you're 30 and you've been flipping burgers for all your life, but you want to become a lawyer, go do it. Like, I'm very serious.
No, I hear you. No, I
you get what I'm saying? Like, don't think because I'm 26, like I gotta have it figured out now. I don't think that's it at all. There's always more opportunity. You can always learn more. You can always go back. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
that's just my opinion.
So here's my so it's not even really a counter, but in a sense of yes, I agree with the perspective. Like not everyone's gonna have that thirst of knowledge, right?
For sure.
But to in a sense give you the and I wouldn't say ability, the opportunities, right? To want to even have that thirst for knowledge, right? Not even you wanting it yourself or whatever, to be patient with the kid and understand that everyone learns and grows at different paces and some are better at this and then others, but to still create a space where there is that growth, right? I would much rather an environment that's pushing the growth or then instead, it's okay whether you're fixed or even below your ability, right? Because at a young age, of course, you don't understand the importance of what it is. Now, I'm just now understanding the importance of some things that I learned when I was younger, right? And so, but to get those opportunities, right? To have that space to be able to get that knowledge, if you want that knowledge, right? To have those environments and spaces to be able to do so. Because I truly believe if we are I'm speaking more so for the Black community, right? Only because that's where I was raised, right? In that environment to teach, like it is cool to read, right? Like you don't have to just be playing basketball or rapping.
Yeah,
like, come on now,
sure,
like
for sure.
most of y'all not gonna make it. Like let's be realistic.
1% chance, man.
Like you're probably not gonna make it, but you know what you can do? You can the biomedical degree, engineering degree. Hey, that's still gonna make you pretty solid if you be able to fight through all the obstacles just like any other person and achieve that. This is actually a goal as well too. Education. You can go into education as well too and teach other people to whatever there's trade school. You don't even have dude, some trade school people make more money than people. I'm like, dude, why did I not know that?
Right, we live in Arizona, right? Them dudes that fix ACs, like they're making 6 figures.
Dude,
but like for whatever reason, there's this negative stigma towards it because you ain't got you don't have a 4-year degree.
Bachelor. Come on now.
That man making 6 figures. How you gonna knock him for that? You know, that doesn't sit easy with me.
No,
but so that's kind of one of the things that like we're programmed to think that we got to have a 4-year university in order to be successful, right? But maybe that kid that doesn't excel in math and science is good with his hands and good with a tool. Maybe he could be a welder. Maybe he could, be a farmer, whatever it may be. That like, that's not this quote unquote, and I don't even like using the word traditional, but that's what they're making it out to be now. It's this traditional path. So I think part of combating what you're talking about is creating more lanes for success.
Yes.
Right.
I would even say creating. Those lanes are already there.
Yeah.
So, like what you're stating, make them. Why do I keep forgetting these words? Make it not so. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but make it more appealing. I don't want to use appealing, but hey, like it's not bad if you're a welder. Like no. Like actually,
you can make
a lot of
figures,
people, and so trade schools are low key slept on, and I don't understand. But what's interesting though is in small cities, trade schools are actually really important. Like, because when I was in Iowa, and I was doing my industrial engineering program, there was some white kids. I don't want, but they're white kids, right? Yeah. These kids have been welding, what do you call? Milling. They've been doing all these things, and this is my first time ever seeing a CNC machine, ever seeing a drill, ever seeing.
But it's second nature.
Yeah,
to them,
but to them, I'm like, damn, bro, like they're just going through like it's nothing because they've seen these equipments and it's not foreign to them, right?
Yeah.
And so now, even with an engineering degree, they have so much more experience behind that and being able to actually get. But so like it's just so foreign to, unfortunately, the Black community. I'm only saying I don't know what other community, but for us. Because our parents are so busy focused on, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a nurse, you got to be an engineer, you got to be this.
I think that's the difference between living in a city and living in something that's rural. Right? So you were talking about being in Iowa.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking like they have a city and whatever, but like a lot of that community lives out in rural America, and they don't have an IBM where they can go and get a software and engineering degree and but we live in the city, and that's kind of like what we're continued to what we're exposed to, right?
Right.
Everyone wants to aspire to be, start like a new tech startup and make billions of dollars. Like, I'm gonna make the next Facebook.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, there's guys that are making six figures off of like owning a washing machine business, and like you said, just like trade schools, like doing something AC related in Arizona, like that's prime, like, it's prime opportunity to make a lot of money, but it's not glorified in the same sense of getting an engineering degree or whatever it is. But I think we can make it just as glorified.
Okay.
I mean, if you give them, if you tell them, this is what you can do within a trade school, and a lot of those are like a year or two programs. I know a buddy of mine who went to mechanic school, and he works on like semis. And that's
he's probably making bread.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And he went to school for like a year or two, and he didn't excel in like traditional school, but he was good with his hands. He loves cars. He was in high school. He was the guy who had like souped up cars, and he painted it, and he loved it. Like, and it's second nature to him. But he wasn't good in math and science, But he could change your carburetor in like a couple hours, like or whatever it is. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
But it makes sense. What's interesting? So I quit my job a while ago, my designing job.
Okay.
And I'm doing construction now, right? Because that's something I've always liked. Because my whole point was to work with my hands, right? That's always been the thing.
Okay.
And what's interesting though, these people who don't have degrees, because that's the industry that I'm currently in right now. Like, so I have a bachelor's, but these people don't. They don't have a degree. They just know these things, right? So you give them blueprints. They really don't know what really is on the blueprints. I'll be the one designing those blueprints, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm in a position where I'm actually putting together what those blueprints are. But what's so interesting is like there's this notion that construction workers or trade school workers aren't as smart as engineers. I would beg to differ just because I'm in that environment now. These people, even without the degree, I guarantee you know way more than most engineers. Not the technical aspects of it, right? Not the application. The application, yeah. So
how it comes together.
Exactly.
What fits, what doesn't.
And so to me, and that's the reason why I'm like, trade school is such a underrated, and unfortunately, I guess it starts with us, right? If we ever have kids, I don't know if you want to have kids or whatever, but if you have kids, you teach, hey, dude, you can go and spend thousands of dollars for this 4-year degree. Or
by the time we have kids, it's gonna be millions of dollars, man. The way this is going,
is crazy. For sure, it's just ridiculous. And things like I think that me it was more so with basketball. That's the reason why I decided. But anyway, to move forward with your life, Monty.
Yeah.
I am. This can hopefully gets taken into a different way, right?
I got you.
What does, I guess you wouldn't, I'm trying to word it. How has your past, I'm pretty sure you forgot the question. How has because the whole point of this podcast is, how does someone go through something and turn out the way they did, right? Mm-hmm. So even if I ever see someone and they want to be on my podcast, if they went through something and they just were the worst people ever, I'm still curious to know, right? How do you get born in an environment with so much issues, but alongside someone else, and these two people turn out so completely different, right? I'm always intrigued to see how their past shaped them to become who they are. And so for you, what are some takeaways from your past that you think you still hold on to make you who you are? What do you think are some of the past that you think that you still hold on to that maybe are parts of Amani that you're not a big fan of? And then even the other way, what are some parts of the past Amani you wish you can pass on to the next person that you meet, in a sense, right? I think those three things to me, they're important. I don't know if anyone else is, but I'm kind of curious to understand those three things from the past that have shaped you to become who you are.
I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that everyone is just having a human experience.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And you just, like, no one has all the answers.
Yeah.
I mean, in 5 years from now, I might be in a completely different place.
Hopefully we have another podcast.
I might hold completely different values, and the events that shape your life, whether it be your environment or your nurture, is ultimately going to decide who you become as an individual.
Right.
And for me, like, I understand, even though I don't remember, I understand what it is that we went through.
Right.
And kind of like, you know, coming full circle, the question I always ask myself, and maybe it's a burden that I put on myself. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, there's a reason and why we were so lucky to make it through that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's got to be a reason as to why you and I, right now,
Yeah.
you got the engineering degree, like, you got a beautiful family. I'm in a similar situation. Like, it's like, even though that was bad, and there's a lot of people that didn't make it,
Yeah.
but like, now I think it's on us to make the best of the opportunity in which we were given.
Right.
And so, like, am I gonna allow my environment, living in America and the circumstances that come with being black and living in America, define who I am? I can't.
Right.
Because I survived this other thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that like my memory suppresses because it was so violent.
Right.
That like I haven't even really begun to address it, but it has impacted me. I know that for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like, I'm given an opportunity, I don't want to waste it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so how does Amani not waste it? So what does that look like for you? To not wasting it, right? That's I think that's a beautiful thing that you stated, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious to know the application of what that looks like in your life then.
So, okay, back to what we talked about, right? Like, I don't want to waste the opportunity that I was given. So how do I make the best of what I know, like, or the best of what I've been given? And that is to create the best environment for my future children.
Mm-hmm.
and those that I do love, right?
Right.
Whether it be my sister, the family that did adopt me, that's all encompassed in this umbrella that I consider my family, right?
Right.
So there's a responsibility that I feel that I have to be able to provide as a man, like,
Mm-hmm.
the best that I can, right?
Right.
So you work every day towards that goal. Like, right now, I'm trying to buy property. I want to buy a house. I have 2 roommates that will help, like, you know, pay for the mortgage, right? We've lived together for a couple of years, and it's a great opportunity for me to build equity into a home, and for like after 2 to 3 years, that equity I can then put into another home
Right.
that fill with other renters, and that thing multiplies, right? Like, I can't be in the position that I'm in now without having gone through what I've gone through, like, in that camp, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to make the best of the situation in which you're dealt. And I think every day, if you keep a positive mindset and look for growth and things that make you happy, like, I talk about buying land and you know, financial literacy, and part of it feels like it's a responsibility, but at the same time, I also enjoy it.
Right.
Like, I enjoy learning about finance. I enjoy learning about business. I found something that I enjoy doing thoroughly, like, within myself.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was an engineer student,
Right.
and maybe that's a path that I want to go. Like, maybe I want to be able to make something that changes,
Right.
that changes the lives of people, and maybe that would be my impact if I was on that route. But like, I understand the skills and my interests now. For now, again, that might change in the future. But I'm just trying to make the best of the opportunity that I was given, and
Mhm.
just be the best man that I can be. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. So how does Amani's past? No, I'm gonna give more context because I've met people that have went through what we went through, and there's just some shitty people. Like, there's anger, there's
Yeah.
frustration, they're still mad about what happened to them, and they want to go back and find a way to solve it or whatever it is, right?
Okay.
And there's people like you that I meet, right? Again, maybe I'm not with you every day, but whenever I do ever encounter you, there's a genuineness about you and there's a kindness about you, right?
Yeah.
Why does your past and things that you went through cause you to be just a kind and genuine person? Because for as long as I've known you, you've always been a sweet kid and just really nice to other people. And that's probably why people are drawn to you and you can get along with people, like you said, when you were younger.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is for you, that you're able to use that past and still, instead of holding so much anger and just hate inside of you, and then allowing it to project on other people, you instead choose to love and be kind to others.
Because I've seen the other side of it,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And I know what that comes with. And there's no, I mean, if we're both sitting here and we're both mad, we're just
Right.
both mad.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. We're not doing anything.
Mhm.
Like we're not changing, right?
Right.
The only way that I can see change and progress is through positivity, love, and progression. Like whether you're advancing in engineering or in business, whatever it may be, like you said, those individuals are mad and they're stuck in the past.
Mhm.
But you can't change the past, right? So like why perseverate on it so much? Like you said earlier, you know, there's a time and a place to experience all things,
Right.
but you also have to experience all things. One of those
Exactly.
things is happiness and joy. I choose to experience those things more often than to choose anger and sadness.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of like a choice you have to make on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, I'm blessed and happy that I continue to choose love and happiness. I
Right.
guess, you know.
Hopefully, neither one of us ends up choosing hate at any point of our life.
Exactly.
But man, the podcast has gone pretty long time. I would love to continue the conversation, just because I understand that there's more to Amani than this hour and a half. Right? We end up going
to all day.
we end up going to. Okay, so but let me ask you this question.
What's up?
This is literally has nothing to do. But have you ever thought about doing a podcast in a sense of co-hosting?
Co-hosting?
Yeah, I'm in need of a co-host.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I will say it's a little far for the kid. I live in Tempe. It's like 30 minutes.
Is it?
Yeah.
You and I we can find I don't know what middle school. I could always come to you. I don't mind coming.
I'm just saying that I don't know if I could do it every week, but like,
Well, no, yeah, I don't. I'm like I would, but just because this was. I'm not gonna say that because.
it's the best experience that you had. You
No.
can say that. Tell the people. What do you mean?
No, it's just because you say at the beginning, like this might be a different podcast.
Yeah.
And I definitely recognize while having conversation, and you seem like someone that wants to think, right? Wants to grow, and wants to learn more, right? And have genuine because clearly you and I, even though they're basically the same thing, we both have different points of view and perspectives of matters, right? And I think when it comes to a podcast, those are important, right? And so maybe if you're up for it, maybe another time whenever we have a couple weekends off and you don't have nothing to do,
I got
then
you.
we'll get together, maybe come up with the topic that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I was gonna say we gotta come with like some content. We gotta
for sure.
Do some pre-planning a
Oh,
little bit. Touch
A
on
lot
like,
more.
yeah.
Make sure we kind of do our own research and have
Yeah.
more information on the point instead of just trying to guess. No, but I think this is beautiful as well too because you just kind of, it's more so for the person, right? You and I just kind of segmented into something
Yeah, we
completely
just
different.
talked.
But I thought it was beautiful. I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty great. But thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Likewise.
Everyone, that's the end of a meal and a conversation with Following Faith. Thank you, my brother. I don't know if there's any last minute things that you would like to share with the people. I don't.
No, I think we touched on a
We
lot
touched
of
on
things.
most of the things?
I do
Alright.
hope that I do get to come back and we can talk a little bit more because I enjoyed it just as much.
I
And I
appreciate
think
it.
this is the best podcast that you have.
Oh, I would hope you would think that.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, God loves you. I love you. God bless and stay safe. Thank y'all. Love y'all. Peace.
Peace.
Appreciate it, my guy.
Always.
Dude, this was fun.